This is Bring It In. This is True Hoops little Zoom from quarantine show. There's David Thorpe. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Can I have 30 seconds?
Oh, I yield the floor.
I just want to say, as you know, my dad was hospitalized Friday. I think he's going to be fine. But I spent a long time with him yesterday. He's 81 and dealing with all sorts of things. And you can't help but sit there with your dad in a hospital room. I know you went through this with your father. You can't help but think about your own mortality and your life. And I just wanted to say that most of my week, but certainly every Monday and Friday, to spend time with you and Judy and Gerard, it's really meaningful to me. I know that my dad doesn't get a do-over. This is it. And I'm very aware in the moment that I'm doing what I love to do with people I love and respect. So just thanks for the opportunity to spend time with you when I still have the time to spend.
Listen, David, we had, in the heart of the pandemic, we had some almost crying episodes on Bring It In. And we got out of that. We're out of that business now.
I know what you're saying. Let's say thank you. We can move on.
It was a global pandemic. Thank you. I value it too. Thank you to everyone for joining us. All right. I didn't know you're going to get all emotional on us to open the show. I prepared for the show in a different way by going to NBA.com/stats and digging around preseason numbers. Is that the same vibe?
More fun, that's for sure.
No, Dad, okay? What's the deal? Is the NBA okay?
Yeah, we don't know. He's just fighting a lot of things, and his blood pressure got really low, and I had to use some Jewish guilt to go into he wouldn't go to the emergency room, and I basically said, well, if you don't, and you collapse, it's all on me. I live 3 minutes away.
Thank God you're Jewish.
Yeah, right. I'm not sure anyone else could utilize it the way us Jews can.
The Catholics make claims. The Catholics claim that they can do this kind of thing.
Right. I know. But anyway, we're hopeful. He's progressing in a good way. My brother Mike's the quarterback and overseeing everything. So we're hopeful that he'll be home in the next couple of days. But nonetheless, it's not easy to see your old man. He doesn't like it. He wants to live in peace, and it's not peaceful in a hospital.
There is this. So I did this college semester in Tibetan studies in Asia, in India, Nepal, and Tibet. And like the Dalai Lama recommends that you routinely, calmly, lovingly, like picture your own death and the death of all of your closest loved ones so that it makes you better prioritize when you're not dying. Like, what is that? So to me, that's what you opened the show saying is actually like Dalai Lama would say we should do that all the time, right? Like it's kind of like,
For about a year, as the only person I followed on Twitter. When I joined Twitter like 2007 for ESPN, I could tweet stuff out. I was too stupid to realize I could also follow other people writing about things that meant something to me. So I just followed the Dalai Lama.
Smart. That's smart.
Yeah. It's not a bad follow. I still follow him.
So Caleb says that seems terrible, Henry. And it does seem terrible. But I'll tell you that thinking about it in a panicky way or not thinking about it, you can't learn anything from it. But if you're just like, okay, let me really, okay, let's have a metaphysical moment on bringing it. All right. So after he said this, I literally I rented this crappy apartment outside Kathmandu and you ride your bike. The bike's the only way to get around Kathmandu. And, but you go by this place on the river where they literally the main way that people, have their end of life ceremony is on a funeral pyre, an open fire. So here's dad on the pile of sticks, circle of family around. It's the most breathtakingly sad thing you could possibly imagine, right?
Wow.
And they're there for hours. It takes hours to burn a body. And there's a man with a stick, flopping the arms in. I'm not even kidding. It's outrageous. And at the same time, they shave the kids' heads. And they change them into white. And they wear white clothes for a year. And anyway, so then they throw everything in the river. So you have some time to sit there and really think about this. I sat a respectable distance away, but over an hour or 90 minutes or 3 hours watching all this and picturing your loved ones, it really does. Now you can use it in a way that what do you want to do with the rest of your day? You're not going to play just video games that day, right? Time is short. You want to get some shit done. You want to spend time with people you really love. And I think it is actually kind of it's a useful exercise.
I'm not going to second guess the Dolly.
The Dolly. I think he would go by the llama, probably.
Yeah, I know. We're a little more informal here.
Yeah.
It's a pandemic.
All right. So Caleb didn't need that lecture, but I wanted to get anyway. All right. So later today we're going to publish something David's been kind of working on. It's you're the guys that are working on a hot rod in your garage for all these months. You're about to roll it out, but it's basically he's looked at 1,230 NBA games and he's predicted who's going to win every single one. And now we've broken it all apart into like the Bucks are going to be 58 and 24, etc. You can see how well your team's going to do. Are you nervous, David? Are you excited? Do you have any concerns?
Am I nervous at what I predicted?
I mean, is there like, like, oh man, that maybe 56 much for the Suns? Do you have any like?
No, I mean, I'm sure I'm gonna be wrong all over the place. Honestly, the team that causes me the most angst is there's two, but one in particular is Minnesota. I have 28 and 54, and they're just always terrible. But Chris Finch, who I've known a long time, they finished 8 and 7, which I wrote about, as you know. And I mean, they got Karl-Anthony Towns, and they have this incredible athlete, Anthony Edwards, and D'Angelo Russell is a very good offensive player. People trash on him, but he's still an elite offensive player. So I could be wrong by a lot on that. And the Spurs at 29 and 51, less because of their roster, more because I think they could go get Ben Simmons. And but I can't predict all of that. So basically, I did my best to look at, okay, this is the roster they have. These are the games we know they're going to play. This is all we know. So based on what we know, these are what I think will happen. This is what I think will happen. If something changes and guys get traded, whatever, what can I do about that? I'll read you.
There's one. I all of it looked very commonsensical to me. But there was one where I was like, ooh, that seems high. Which was my team, the Blazers. I was like, I don't like. You have them finishing 5th in the West, just behind the Warriors, ahead of the Nuggets and the Mavericks and the Clippers and the Grizzlies and the Pelicans. And I was like, I'm brainwashed a little bit by I just rewatched Friday night's loss to the Warriors, where the team was just terrible. They're just so bad.
But we know they have Damian and CJ. I like the addition of Larry Nance Jr. Defensively. I think that they'd gotten stale with Terry Stotts. I've talked to some people within the organization that agreed, and I think that there's going to be, I do think Chauncey is ambitious with what he's hoping to get done, which does cause me some concern, but it's unfair for me. Not every coach has admitted publicly what he wants to do strategically. So the fact that he did, who knows if it's even true. They've been bad this preseason for sure, but you think Damian Lillard cares about preseason? I don't. CJ, I don't think they care. So I think they're going to end up being, like I said, I think that's where they're going to be at. But I mean, they could easily melt down for sure.
What's funny is that the defense has been terrible and dramatically better than last year.
Is that right?
Yeah,
that's funny. You don't see that much. Well,
I mean, they were 22nd or 23rd in the preseason, and they were 27th, 28th last year. So
the thing to remember, and maybe this is too simplistic, but I'm a simple guy. This game, 5 guys are on a court per team at a time, and if you've got one guy just way better than everyone, it's just an enormous advantage. And so as I did this, I have to think about, well, how many points is Damian score in that game? He's an incredible player, and I think that he's motivated. I think he'll play really, really, really well and really hard. He's fun. He's the top 7, top 8 player in the league, probably, certainly offensively, higher than that offensively. So not a great news for me that you think 47 is too much, but and I've not looked to see what Vegas has. I've not looked to see what Hollinger has, which actually means more to me than what Vegas would put. But I would guess everyone's going to be around 45 to 48. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, I guess you're right. The total doesn't seem so crazy. It's more just seeing them ahead of the Nuggets. I'm like, whoa.
Well, if Jamal Murray was there, that wouldn't be the case. Yeah. I think that Denver's a team too. Let's just see about how their head coach works out. Mike Malone, I've had a love and hate relationship with him. I don't know him, but just in terms of evaluating what he's done, I didn't love him with DeMarcus Cousins. He clearly has done a great job in Denver much of the time. And he deserves some credit, at least, for how Jokic was the best player in the world last year. But let's see how MPJ handles being the second guy for sure. Does he make a jump defensively? What's their identity besides Jokic's talent? Yeah. I mean, if Jamal Murray is there, I might pick them to win the whole thing. I would pick them to win the West for sure if Jamal Murray was there and healthy. That's how much I feel about the Nuggets with him. Without him, I think, it's likely they're going to fight for, basically it's 3 teams for sure in the West. And then I think it's a scrum with 5 maybe to get to that next spot.
Yeah, that actually was one other. The one other thing that struck me a little bit was the Hawks. You have them fifth in the East at 50-32, and that seems very, that seems very sober to me. But like you have written an article that convinced me that the upside is very high, and they have young players, like John Collins, DeAndre Hunter, and Cam Reddish all might improve dramatically this year given their age and backgrounds. Like, I don't know. I watched one Hawks preseason game, and it was the most fun thing I've watched in a long time. Like that's the team to watch, right? Like, so I don't know. Part of me is like that. I mean, I guess we're a little brainwashed by watching them win big playoff series, but like the Hawks could, of course, win the East, right? Like, of course they could. Like,
they could. I still think the biggest problem is the teams in front of them. Philadelphia, Ben Simmons is back. Who knows what'll happen there? Joel Embiid is just a phenomenal player and not a great matchup for Atlanta. If Ben Simmons or his replacement was cooking better, I thought Philly should have won that series. And remember, Embiid was hurt. We said this on the show that if Embiid wasn't healthy, I picked the Hawks to win the series against the Sixers. Embiid was healthy offensively. I thought he really struggled defensively. Their team wasn't terrible defensively.
Wait, that's the thing. Healthy offensively is the thing.
Yeah. I just think his ability to play wasn't inhibited as much because of his knee issue with the ball in his hands than it was having to move around and guard a bunch of people.
Right.
And then the other thing to remember about Atlanta too is they are still very young in so many different spots. I mean, Trae Young is still very young. DeAndre Hunter hasn't played a full season as a starter. Last year he got hurt twice. Cam Reddish, we still don't know about. Okonwu off the bench is an interesting big. I like Herter, but he still hasn't had he was very good in the postseason, but he wasn't consistent in the regular season. 50 wins is, I mean, that's a hell of a year for them, knowing they've got so much more room to grow. But if all those guys click, I mean, I gave them, I think, a 0.5% to win the whole thing. So it wasn't 0%, right? The Knicks are at 0%.
I really like having, you just listed 6 players with the potential to be, they don't need all 6, right? Like when you're drawing 6 cards from the poker deck, like you're going to get something good, right? Like it feels like it seems very likely that someone's going to surge forward. Okay. All right. So we dug into, I mean, this is a short preseason. Preseason stats are kind of BS regardless, but there are some signals. I'm sure we can find a Kevin Pelton story about what does matter statistically from preseason. One of them that has made a big impression on me is a little David Thorpe story from many years ago. We were all going to assemble in Bristol, Connecticut for our annual confab with the bosses. But first we met in New York and went to a preseason Knicks game, I think with Mark Stein. And as we parked our car near Madison Square Garden, there was this NBA advanced scout guy I know also parking his car. And David had David, I introduced you to, and then David said, well, who's playing good team D? That's what you cared about. That was your one question about preseason. And the guy immediately said the Lakers, and they won the championship that year. So, if you're absolutely terrible on defense in the preseason, maybe it comes around. But if you're like the Suns are playing really good team D already. So that's interesting to me, as are a few other things I thought we might dig into a little bit here. Starting with this thing, which is that for most of the last decade, the Warriors, Suns, Mike D'Antoni offense becoming more about threes, Rockets having the best offense, etc. during this period. The teams with the best players, the teams with the Kevin Durant's and the James Hardens have tended to shoot ever more threes, right? We got to 30 a game, 40 a game, now approaching 50 a game. Since Giannis just won the championship by dominating the paint, this preseason, suddenly we're seeing that a lot of the teams that have the very best players are taking more, under 40 a game. The Warriors are pretty much the only contenders who are way up there, which is a very interesting thing. And the Warriors are taking tons of threes in the preseason, and they're barely in the top 10 in offensive efficiency, which is this is looking like a little bit of a new season, a new approach where the NBA is going to maybe have a little reduction in how many threes teams are shooting. What do you think? Did we find peak 3 already?
I think it'll ebb and flow a little bit based on defensive strategies. and success. When we talk about analytics, Henry, I know you know this very well. It's really a search for not what's beautiful, but what's effective. And as the smartest people are able to dive deeper and deeper into what's working the best, and then that translates into what the coaches can run to produce those results, we're, I think, finding more and more that wide open shots, no matter where they are, with the right player shooting them, is the ultimate, other than getting fouled, which is always the best thing you can do. Just get fouled. If a team got fouled every possession on offense, they'd have the greatest offense of all time by a gigantic margin, almost no matter who's shooting the free throws, right? So I think that as defense have gotten more comfortable extending out, we can talk about why that's happening with individual players. We also have offensive gurus working with data analysts, coming up with ways to just get open shots in the hands of the people that can make them. Rip Hamilton was not a guy that shot threes very well. And maybe in the last 8 years, if you remember Rip Hamilton from Detroit, I know you do, maybe he'd be seen as a lesser kind of player than he would be right now, because Rip Hamilton from 17 feet coming off a pin down, a wide pin or a stagger, my guess is his numbers were really, really good. And now you got to guard that. So if you don't, he's going to produce at a very high number, even though they're just twos. They still count if you make them. And if you send resources to guard that, remember, you're not just guarding him, you're also accounting for the screener. Well, if three are guarding two somewhere else, that means two are guarding three the rest of the court. And now you can get a swing, get a dunk, get a wide open corner three. Like, this is the name of the game. Well, you have to establish that. You have to establish the ability to make at a high percentage, whatever shot it is, two or three. And I think we have an ebb and flow going with how teams are scheming to guard. And then they have to make a decision too, Henry. I think I told you Portland, for example, has Chauncey Billups announced publicly that they're going to meet the screen. The guy guarding the screen is going to meet the ball handler up the floor as opposed to dropping. This is his genius moment. And we've talked on the show how Stan Van Gundy wanted to do that last year for the Pelicans, and it was an abomination. They couldn't do it because that big struggle to contain the ball handler, which brought another person over having to help, or that gave that person a wide open three or layup. And now you're in rotation because, again, now you've got three guarding two. And now two is guarding three everywhere else. You can't win that. So if you can solve a pick and roll, for example, or a pick and pop with two players, that's two guarding two, we're good. We're 3 on 3 everywhere else. This is the name of the game. If it just like Steve Curry says, get that first domino to fall, right? It's great. It's Greg Popovich is good to great. Where's he get a good shot? You tried to take it away. Now we're moving them off for a great shot. It's all the same formula. And
but there's one that, like, I'm hearing what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think there's one key thing I would add, which is the argument over the last decade of stats, right, has been of course. I mean, you've seen the second spectrum, like expected points per attempt from any different player in any different spot, right? Like, there was never a team, I don't think, that was so stupid as like just make them all threes. It was like, no. Rip Hamilton coming off a screen has an expected points per attempt of like 1.4 or whatever. Everybody always wanted that, right? Like, the difference was like that having tons of threes from all over the court was seen as the way to get all of the good shots, right? It wasn't just the way to get more threes. It was the way to get more layups and more open twos and more everything, correct, right? Like, and more fouls, right? It was seen as like, for a while, I think if you took like 15 years ago best offenses, then everybody was better with more threes, right? Nobody was shooting enough threes. It was like maybe most people say they don't get enough exercise, right? Like, everybody's been more vegetable. It was just like everybody was deficient of threes, right? And now I think we're in this new thing. And so you were getting fired as a coach. If you were the coach who said in preseason, like some did 15 years ago, like, I think it's a hokey shot. We're not going to do that, right? Like, out, you're done. With malice, right? Like, but I think Giannis just changed that, right? Giannis just made it so that now if you're the guy who's like, hey, like, we're gonna well, for instance, you could say in this preseason, we have a better offense than the Steph Curry Warriors without that many threes. That's happening right now. This is not standard, right? Like, this is and I think that's because teams with players like Giannis, right? Teams with players, MVP candidates are now, Giannis got permission from Giannis to tinker a little bit with 35 threes, which is more than the Suns ever shot, rather than 45, right? I think we're just seeing a little bit of like that Rip Hamilton argument sounds a lot better than a year ago.
Yeah, well, we again, I think we were the first to cover that pivot that Giannis and the Bucks made.
Yeah,
it was confusing. No one had ever pivoted mid-series offensively.
Yeah,
they've done it defensively, how you guard certain actions, but that was such a pivot to what they did. Now there is no other Giannis in the league. There are Giannis-like in terms of impact. The Sixers are a team that likes to play bully ball. They were 13th in offense, if I remember, last year. I think part of that's just bad shot selection. Giannis goes downhill even more than Embiid does. Embiid is so skilled, he gets away with it. Tobias Harris, who also posts a lot for them, isn't as good. But I completely agree. I think that it's opened, you know how I talk about scotomas and sensory blindness. It's opened coaches' reticular activation centers to value certain things that maybe they weren't valuing before like they should have, or maybe they did years ago and kind of got calloused over it a little bit. And so now, and so to me, it should always be the best offense can do everything. And now the defense has to pick your poison. Well, if you pick your poison, but they run out of poison, well, the defense wins. Yeah. An offense that can do it all is much harder to stop, because no matter what you choose to take away, we have another plan.
And and the way it translates now is do the Lakers bet on Russell Westbrook without Giannis showing him how to take over, right? Or we've talked a lot about where Ben Simmons fits in different teams' offenses, but we're like, hell yeah, you can win a title with a guy who can't shoot, right? I think you and I feel that way now, but that just got a lot easier to believe, I guess, right?
Yeah. And then just to be clear, we talked about this on the phone before. We're evolving into a situation where, as the game has gotten the landscape is so wide now, the bigs that we have entering the league have been guarding the perimeter for a long time,
right? Because
of switching going. I mean, my son just played a couple years ago. We switched almost everything, not entirely, but often during a game, our big guys had to guard guards and vice versa. And so as I said to you on the phone today, 10 years ago, an NBA veteran had not been guarding the perimeter ever.
It's like Sean Bradley out there is just getting roasted.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they never did it before. But now you get a guy that's entering a league. He's been guarding the perimeter for a good amount of time, going back to his high school and AAU days. And they're just more comfortable moving. And also because all these guys want to handle it and step back threes and inside out cross, hesitate, go kind of stuff. By doing that more offensively, Henry, they're actually preparing themselves mentally and physically to guard that defensively. Yeah. It's a trick that I've been using for a long time. And I think it's not going to be as effective anymore, because now they're doing it on their own when they play. I've always treated my bigs, my 7-footers, like guards to get them more comfortable playing defense against those guys. So as that evolves, the Anthony Davises of the world, even Rudy Gobert, watch Rudy Gobert. The idea that he can't guard guards is absurd. Now, it's funny to look at it. He's enormously long and tall, but no guards like to go up against Rudy Gobert on the perimeter. No, he moves his feet really well. He stops and starts really well. And we're going to see more and more centers. Clint Capella doesn't, but we're going to start seeing more and more people that look like Clint that can guard like Rudy on the perimeter, because they'll just have been doing it their whole life.
And that's a story about hips, by the way.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Like that.
I say it all the time. Yeah.
Rudy, Tim McMahon wrote a really good story years ago about how the Jazz had Rudy on like a 5-year program to kind of change his body so that he would be, yes, Caleb, hips don't lie. But they foresaw this, and they had him work on very specialized stuff with our friends at P3 and others, to basically Rudy can really move in a way that Sean Bradley would just never even worked on that. Right. That wasn't what they asked players that size to do. But, Anthony Davis, I guarantee works on that. Right. There's a reason he can move like that.
Yeah. In football, where I live in a football state, we talk about the ability to swivel hips to be what's called a cornerback, corner, not quarter. Yeah. Because you're guarding the world's fastest men. And I mean that sincerely. There's been a few NFL players that were once the world's fastest men, going back to Bob Hayes, who's from Florida, in the 60s. But they can also stop on a dime and change direction. So you better swivel your hips And so years and years ago, when I first started training Omri Caspi, who's basically 6'10" from Israel, and he was a terrible defender because he didn't realize how gifted he was at swiveling his hips. And I explained to him one day when he came here, if you grew up in my state and you were just 6'2", you would be a defensive player in football, if not a wide receiver, because you are so incredibly fluid and agile at top speed at changing your directions on the fly. Like, it's just so hard to do. And that next year, I think he was third behind Durant and LeBron at small forward defensive rating. Like, he understood, hey, I can really guard. I can do this kind of thing. We're seeing that more and more. And yeah, you have to train for it, which goes back to why I do so much offensively with them. It definitely makes them better at defense.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And there's a little poking around here. Let's look at actually the best defense of the preseason. Just again, these are numbers.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you that these rankings are accurate. I'm telling you that the Bulls and the Suns and the Mavericks and the Grizzlies, people had a hard time scoring on them over 4 to 6 games, right? Did you see anything from those teams that looks like it will matter?
Yeah. So I think you can check the schedule with someone, maybe Devin can. I think Chicago played Cleveland at least twice.
Yeah, that helps. Yep.
So that definitely helps. But the Mavericks is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan of Jason Kidd as a coach, or even maybe as a person. He was a hell of a player. I saw him in high school. He's a great player, obviously, Hall of Famer. But clearly, has a mission to get his guys to defend with more force, and I think they did that. I think everyone talks about defense in theory, but I can tell you, even now in preseason, I talked to an NBA player who was talking about a previous coach he had that got fired. And he's like, he never mentioned defense one time. So
that can't help.
Yeah. And they were like bottom few in defense every year. Yeah.
How does that happen? Don't you assume that they talk about defense like every day? I assume.
And the thing is, this particular coach used to talk about defense. I don't know what happened, but he's gone now.
What's on the whiteboard before the game? What does it say on the whiteboard? Just like make buckets. Come on. Every whiteboard has everything about pick and roll coverage. That's every whiteboard is just pick and roll coverage, right? Like, they must have talked about defense some.
Well, apparently not according to this player. And I can tell you, I'll give you one anecdote because all of them are retired now except for one player. I'm sure I've told this before, but in my gym one time, I had Kevin Martin, who was a rookie with Sacramento Kings. He had just finished his rookie season, and Giannis Haslam, who had just finished maybe year 2 with Stan Van Gundy in Miami. Year 3 is when Riley came in during the season. And I knew what each of them was telling me privately about their attention to defense during the season, but they hadn't talked to each other. And Kevin was 23 at the time. He was young. So we went to lunch together after a session. And I said, Kevin, I want you to tell UD like what a typical week is like playing under Rick Adelman. And defensively in terms of practice. And he just laughed. He's like, oh, we don't talk about defense, coach. He just worries about his offense. I used to always joke about he just wants to worry about his beautiful offense. And it was beautiful. And Udonis was like he was hearing a language he'd never heard before. And I said, okay, Udonis, tell Kevin what it's like for you with Stan Van Gundy talking about defense. And that was the rest of lunch. The attention to detail the Heat made back then. And there was a reason why they were great on defense and the Kings sucked at defense. That stuff matters. So I think Jason Kidd is addressing it. Now, you got to continue to tweak the engine all the time as teams learn your weak points, your pressure points to attack. You got to find ways to shore it up, whether it's a personnel change in your rotation, whether it's an acquisition via trade, right? Or you just change up your tactics the way the Pelicans did last season when they stopped showing at the ball screen and started dropping pretty much exclusively with Steven Adams and became a top 10 defense after being bottom 10 or bottom 5 even. So you got to start with prioritizing it, and then you got to demand execution, and then you got to play the right players and all those kinds of things. I think Dallas, I'm not convinced they're going to be great. I think I have them win 46 games right there with Denver, Portland, Golden State. But if they play great defense, they'll be better. And who are the other ones? Chicago, them, who else? Memphis.
Phoenix,
no surprise. I have Phoenix, as you know, tied for first in the West. I love them, as I think everyone should. Memphis is the big thing. John Morant is not a good defensive player, but needs to be better for them to make a leap. And then Jaren Jackson Jr., who's not been a good defensive player. but has, I thought, the talent to be a dominant defensive player. I thought he was someone who could guard everywhere early on. I've been wrong so far. Of course, he did get hurt. But yeah, Memphis, we'll see. I think their coach is good. I think he's a good coach. This is the year we'll see if they can maintain that, because they should be pretty good offensively with Ja in year 3.
Okay, here's another little oddity I noticed is that the teams that have been terrible in the preseason are the teams that have turned it over a lot. I say this as a Blazer fan, who have turned it over the most. It's like they might have set a record with their 22.1% turnover percentage. Can that possibly be true? Does that mean they're turning it over like more than 1 out of 5 possessions? Is that really what's
almost
happening?
A quarter of their possessions were turnovers? That's an astounding. That's a high school number. It's a high school. Seriously, high schools sometimes get to 40%, then they lose by 50. But there are a lot in the. Because I look at film. Have you ever heard of Huddle?
Yeah.
Okay, so I look at Huddle all the time because I mentor a lot of young coaches who share with me their games. And the first thing I always look at, is the turnover percentage. Because if it's a 25 plus and they still win, well, they just played a terrible fucking team.
And I'll tell you this: the opponent's points off turnovers. The Trailblazers have an even bigger lead there. 25.5% of the opponent's points have come off turnovers. Like, that's okay. Now, this is the good news is, like, it is clearly a shift in what they do, right? They were the most ISO heavy team in the league last year, which means there's a little trick. Everyone's like, oh, they're so good with the ball. They don't turn it over. It's like, no, they don't pass the fucking ball. Like that's why it doesn't help your team to just not pass. It just means you don't have turnovers, right? What you have is lower field goal percentage because you're taking guarded shots, right?
Exactly.
But so like it's a bad trade-off. So this is a team that's been ISO heavy forever, and they've changed everything. It looks like everyone's been told that if you hold the ball for more than a dribble, we're going to sit you for the rest of the night. And then there's like hot potato craziness. It can't possibly keep up as badly as it's been, right? It seems like either what's really going to happen, I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to look in the future and tell you they will also be the most ISO heavy team this year. But we're going to have a little month of just playing around with Nurkic running everything. And like, it's not how it's going to go for the long run. But for now, this is a freak show. But interestingly, that's the same story of like the leaders in getting scored on off turnovers in the preseason include everyone who underperformed: the Nets, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Rockets, the Pelicans. Those are your leaders in opponent points off turnovers. So it feels like to me, did you happen to, in your 4 to 6 preseason games, give the other team the ball a lot? Like, well, then your preseason sucked.
Right. If you throw the ball to the bad guys, bad things happen.
Every time.
And I also, with the Nets as an example, that's just them just not giving a fuck. They just, whatever. They're not racing back with purpose.
No.
With some of these other teams, it's different. It's more problematic. And that's going to be fine with Harden, Durant, and Patty Mills and Joe Harris. I mean, they've got a bunch of guys that will be fine. Live ball turnovers are a killer. Live ball. As someone whose son was a point guard for a long time and still is, I'd rather you throw it out of bounds, Max, because they can't fast break as you throw it out of bounds. What I can't have you do is throw the ball to the bad guys. That's really bad for us and really good for them, which is even worse for us.
Yeah, this was one of the early things. Like the first year of the Sloan Conference, Royce Webb told me they thought I should go, and I said that sounds too dorky, Royce. I'm not going. But then the second year, he was like, you really should go. And I still didn't really get why I would go to an advanced stats conference. But I was standing in the aisle and I heard some guy talk about, we learned that, like, I'm going to forget the numbers, but like a live ball turnover is worth something like 1.4 points for the team that gets it.
Yeah.
Whereas like an out of bounds turnover or after a basket is worth like 0.9, something like that. And I was like, oh, that is why you come to a conference like this. Right? Like there are a lot of these sort of things people think they know about sports which fall apart upon examination, but this one I'm like, oh, like that's a giant difference. And that means suddenly, like, thinking about my pickup game, I'm like, this kid Ryan, who has the longest arms in the world, who's super active, like he was the live ball turnover machine. And I was like, and it seemed to me like his team would always win. It felt like Ryan's team, he was not a particularly good offensive player, but it just seemed like Ryan's team always won. I'm like, I think Ryan's team is getting 1.4 points per possession all the time.
Well, it's like you said earlier, just regarding the ISO based Portland team that you're projecting will come. it's, you're not going to make a living stealing the ball from CJ and Dame.
No.
So that a team always has as an option, but I think you're exactly right. I did it through trial and error as a young coach. I just realized that if I can teach my team ball security, and then defensively, we denied every pass ball side. So we helped up from help side, but so you couldn't drive to the right, like into the paint. I started coaching year 1 of threes in national high school. So I've only coached against 3-point shots starting at 87, fall of 87. So if you penetrate on the right, we did not help off the shooter. We probably should have, because no one could shoot great back then, but we didn't. I didn't want to give you the chance to kick it out. I wanted you to try to make a play in a crowd. And then we would bring help from the weak side. And we were extremely successful in forcing lots of turnovers. I think our first 2 games one year, we forced 41 and 42 turnovers, 83 turnovers in 2 games. And I had a college coach watching one of them. Yeah.
Are there records? Are there records kept for that kind of thing?
Not for turnovers, because you have to go back and watch tape, and I watched tape and tape. But we did score over 100 points twice, and I had nothing but 14 and 15 turnovers on my team. And it wasn't because we were a good shooting team. We were not. Yeah. But layup city. I had plenty of guys that could run and jump and dunk at everything and lay it up.
The other kids, by the way, the other team did not have fun that day. They didn't sleep well that night. They don't like basketball anymore. Like, that's just
right. Which is I wrote this in my book. That was our goal.
Yeah.
We wanted them. I literally would tell my team, when they look at their schedule, this was like for even summer league, because we did in summer league too. I want them thinking, fuck, we got to play Dixie Hollins, which is a man's name, Dixie Hollins. I wanted them, because we were going to guard the fuck out of you and make your life miserable. That was just a mentality we took. I think that's where guys like Tibbs have done really well in the NBA. It's not so much ball pressure steals, like a team like New York, and when he was in Chicago and even in days in Boston as he is defensive coordinator. They're just going to make it very tough to get the shot you want. Yeah. And that's fine. There's chaos creators, and then there's guys that lock you down. Like PJ Tucker in his defensive prime was not a chaos creator. Right. He was a lockdown guy. Whereas Corey Brewer was a chaos creator. You could never feel comfortable with your dribble. Eddie Jones was that way. Eddie Jones, remember him? He's also a Floridian. Like, if you thought you were comfortable with the ball, well, he was about to steal it. Like, he wanted you to feel comfortable. He was baiting you. So to me, there's stress both ways. But to your point, the teams that want to make the jump, whatever that jump would be from wherever they are, managing that is a big part of this game. I think just a big part. You can't be sloppy with the ball and expect to have a good offense. And it affects your defense too, because you're getting easier shots.
It does. It does. While Gerard joins us, can you explain what you said to me? Like, basically we're talking too much about the Blazers, and I apologize. It's just because I'm a fan. Here we are. But the thing they're doing on offense is, given Nurk is in the pinch post and running a lot of things, he's a nice passer, but there's a particular weakness he has that you explained to me. Can you talk me through that?
Yeah, I don't even know when we first started talking about, but something I noticed, I may have even written about it. I think I did. He just doesn't really know how to play in a crowd. And you shouldn't play in a crowd. You should quickly pass the ball away from the crowd. But he's trying to make plays in a crowd, and it's just turnover city. A lot of bigs do it. Joel Embiid still has problems sometimes. And I think this is just what I said to you. I think they feel like he'll get better. And I think they're thinking, and you have your own opinion as to what you think is going on. But to me, and I would guess, I mean, why would you tweak? I think they were number 2 in offense last year. So I don't know why they would tweak it, except that they may feel like we got to get better come postseason, and we can't wear Damian out. So if we can run more stuff without featuring Damian and have Nurk and whoever is his backup be a guy that can make plays in the pinch post, which is the elbow area, then we're going to be longer term successful, because we're not going to wear our incredible superstar guard out. In the short term, it's going to cause a lot of problems because he's not ready for it. He's a good passer one-on-one. But when the second guy comes and he's trying to make a play in a crowd, he's not any good at it. He's just got to give
dribbles into 4 guys like fairly often too.
Yeah. You got to get rid of the ball. But you're allowed to get better as a player. You're allowed to grow as a player. Well, you can't grow without sucking, right? You know my quote: "Embrace the suckiness." Well, embrace it, Nurk. Let's get better. Let's not get emotional about it. And let's just hope that November 1, December 1, January 1, if he's not traded, we're suddenly figuring this thing out, and we'll look pretty good come springtime.
Hi, Gerard.
Hello, Henry. Hello, Coach.
I'm mad at myself because I was planning to have ready like a new recurring feature where you're gonna use voiceover voice for, like, right? We should do that. Gerard is a voiceover professional. He has launched a new website, GerardHectorVO.com. Everyone, please hire Gerard. But don't you think we should have it should be like no, like it should be like a thing that recurs on the show where we use
Alfred Molina, or do like my my radio voice, like, welcome to 97.3 K-Rock, where like, right, you do that thing, right?
when we get you nailed down for an agent, I want you to mention that if he's ever looking for a really raspy old man sounding former
David
coach
Thorpe,
voice,
my guy, I'd
like at least an audition.
Or if you want a dog that sounds like been smoking cigarettes for a decade, I got that. Like, that's what we have.
Does Alfred Molina have a deep voice?
He's just got a very like sort of pronounced voice. He does a lot of audio books and yeah.
I didn't realize that. That's cool.
Yeah.
What's can we hear the lowest you can talk?
I mean, my natural register is pretty low, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, it's just kind of like
freak us out. Come on, take it to the submarine. Let's go.
This is the submarine. Oh, Devin, my guy, staying right on time.
Big extension for
boy. Jaren Jackson.
These are the things that keep me up at night. Damn, are they going to pay my guy Triple J money? All right, we're good.
The lesson here is don't waste time on D, kids.
Yeah, so Jaren Jackson, 4-year, $105 million deal he just got, and he's good enough to play his way into that contract. He is not that player right now.
He's not, but, and again, preseason, small sample size.
Good, yes.
Oh, he's looked really good this preseason. The main thing, again, coach, that I keep looking at for him is the foul rate. And the foul rate is way down in the pro. Because, again, he would start the game with 2,000 before they tipped the ball off. And now I'm like, ooh.
Thorpe's rule number 1 on defense, do not foul.
Yeah, do not foul.
And actually, there's there aren't a lot of ways to get like max players for less than max money, but one of them is right here, right? Like, like this is a good bet. You know, that by the end of this contract, he'll be worth a lot more.
Listen, John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., if we waved the magic wand and they became this season the best versions of themselves, they might win a championship.
They're so good.
Those guys are unbelievably talented.
Very good.
And they complement each other extraordinarily well.
And Dylan Brooks is so annoying to other players.
What's that?
Dylan Brooks is so annoying. He's a playoff series winner kind of player, right? Like
they've got a lot of guys. They've got plenty of role players.
I mean, remember in that play-in game against the Warriors, like, yes, that was doing stuff, but like Dylan Brooks was like not deterred by any of it. And like
he was great against the Jazz.
That shit gets annoying after all, right? Like, because if it's one thing great scorers hate are annoying defenders. Like, they're gonna score because they're just so good.
For sure.
But they hate when you make it hard for them. Like, really hate it.
Exactly right.
He doesn't need you to like him. That's for sure.
But yeah, they if those two guys, and that's why you got to be a little patient with Memphis, because they are very young, and JJJ has been injured. I missed a good amount of time, but those two, they're a better duo than Luka and anyone else on Dallas. We're talking about peak levels. The difference is Luka's already there and getting better still, and the Grizzlies guys aren't there yet. But I'm a big fan.
That's your cornerstone of your franchise, right? That's like Oklahoma City drafting Durant and Russell Westbrook.
Exactly right. Yeah, it's not just cornerstone.
It's not Durant. That's the
yes, I know he's not, but you know what I mean. Like,
I like that.
It's not just cornerstone though, Gerard. It's Park Avenue cornerstone.
Correct.
It's those two guys together are Hall of Fame level talents. They're not there yet.
Right.
You have to let them cook. But boy, they're going to be good when they get cooking.
I think so. And I think you're right about Taylor. I was a little, not concerned. It's just sort of like young. I mean, he's young. I mean, he might be younger than me, actually. You get it. And it's just sort of like, how do you know if this guy's any good? But how do you know anybody's any good at anything?
Right.
They got to just do it and see.
Oh, if you're the New Yorker is a really good magazine, one of my favorites. If there's an article on a topic that makes no sense to me, I'm like, well, it must be really fucking good. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put it in here. Right. And I feel the same way. When an NBA team hires someone I've never heard of, I'm always like, well, perchance they hired this person because of their basketball coaching skill rather than their name, right? Like, so to me, like, it doesn't always work out. There have been some really bad cases of this, but usually I'm like, I'm so glad they hired someone that in some meeting in some G League, whatever, like someone who's like actually used things in timeouts and practices, like that's a good idea. Like, for temporarily, I'm out of Blazer ideas to talk about, but I do have some other interesting findings from the preseason. One of them is I made a little note of who is shooting the shit out of the ball. Some of the answers to these questions. This is just a true shooting percentage listing. OG Anunoby.
That's big for Toronto.
Great preseason.
Huge.
That's really, I mean, they're going to be good. I don't know how long it's going to take, but they have so many players who are on the rise, right?
If they get Siakam back and he is back to that all-star level dude, I mean, OG is your prototypical 3-and-D. Like he's got.
David, do they have any rookies you like, David?
Oh yeah, that's Scotty Barnes, dude. Oh yeah.
But forget about Scotty Barnes. I really don't want you to forget about Scotty Barnes. Let's just assume we're capable of forgetting about Scotty Barnes for a moment. I love Malachi Flynn, who is he looks like Peyton Pritchard from Boston. They have no business being an NBA course with gigantically long athletic men, but I think he's really good. I loved him in the draft. I think it was a year ago. It's hard to keep track of all this with the pandemic. I think he's in his second year. He was not good last year. He was very good in a few games this preseason. At one point, it was him and, I forget the other one right now. They scored like 30 some odd points against the Sixers by themselves.
I happened to turn on NBA TV or whatever turn the TV on. I wasn't intending to watch basketball, but for the next, like, I'm standing there with the remote hand. I'm like, Malachi Flynn is like Michael Jordan right now.
He's good. And they have Fred VanVleet. So in talking to people in Toronto, I don't think they think they're going to win a title this year. I have them at 41-41, I believe. And but I mean, if you can get 41, that means you can get to 47. If you get a little bit lucky in those close games that normally you lose half, but instead you're winning 80%, which happens sometimes, you get to 46, 47. And you get that, you start feeling good about yourself. With their ability to switch defensively come April, where Scotty Barnes is now not really a rookie anymore after 82 games, they could knock off a series. I don't know about two, but I like their future, and I think they do too.
Is your piece that's coming out, Coach, is it all win predictions for all the teams?
Yeah.
Okay. So you looked at it, because every time I do that, I'm like, damn, that's too many wins. Like, do you know what I mean? You do the thing when you're like, I gave people too many wins. There's not that many wins to go around.
David's system is to literally go through 1,230 games and a lot every one, so he can't go.
Okay, so you can't do that.
Right?
Okay.
Like, yeah.
So I added up.
Such a hard way to do it.
I added it up. Listen, there's not much I have to do anyway but watch basketball. So studying the game isn't such a big deal. It came to 1,230. My calculator might be messed up, but it added up right.
But first of all, I love Atlanta at 50 wins because that's where but like, damn, you're saying that to make them a 4 seed, not even a 3, because you're assuming Philly, Ben Simmons staying and they're fine.
No, 5 seed. I've got Philly.
He's got the Bucks at 58 wins, the Nets at 57, the Heat at 52, the 76ers at 51, and then the Hawks at 50.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Listen, I could be way wrong. My great friend, a very smart guy, Zach Lowe, he does not think Miami is going to win as many games regular season. He does think they're going to be a monster come postseason. He makes some good points. Their depth isn't great, but we know Kyle Lowry, and we know Adebayo, and we know Jimmy Butler, and we know Duncan Robinson. And I just think, and I wrote this, Tyler Hero is about to say, hello, world again. Remember me? Like, he did not have a great year last year, but he's been so composed this preseason as a primary ball handler / scorer. I think we're going to see a big jump from him. I do. And that's going to help them a lot.
And it's that thing where for a lot of teams, they might actually be better, but be worse seeding wise, right? Like, you got a couple wins, but you're not great seeding because the East is just better.
Exactly. Atlanta's going to be better this year and may not be a seed to decide. They were a 4 seed last year. Or they were a 5 seed against New York. Yeah. New York's going to be better. And I got them as a 7 seed. They're going to be better.
Yeah. Well, and there will be massive injuries league-wide, and the teams that aren't injured will just rocket up the standings just for that, right? Like, that's what happens every year. Okay, from the who's shooting shit out of the ball files, John Morant, Zach LaVine, and then this, I really feel like RJ Barrett's way up there. But Jordan Poole's usage rate is higher than LeBron, KD, or Luka, and his true shooting percentage is just about Steph Curry. He's like within microns of Steph Curry's shooting percentage. holy shit, there's another Splash Brother. Like that's what that looks like to me. Yeah.
Let's discuss this. Well, but this is the point of contention, I feel like, for the people who are either bang the over on the Warriors or the people who are like bang the under because I don't know what's happening here.
What was the number? What was the total, Gerard? Do you remember?
47, maybe, sounds about right.
All right, I got him at 48, so good.
I mean, if you can look that up, I think that's right for them. I can't remember off the top of my head. My thing is, I'm just unsure because I'm like, I don't know. Does Jordan Poole? I don't have a history of data to tell me that's going to happen.
Look, you don't have a pool of data?
I don't have a pool of data that tells me that, right? Like, and then everybody's assuming Clay going to be great coming back. He might be.
Right.
Like, I don't know, but defensively is what's concerned me the most about Clay coming back. I think he'll be fine because he shoots well, whatever. But him running off screens, maybe that's not as great as it was because you're a little bit off. But your defense, which, by the way, is key to why the Warriors are so good defense. Yes, of course, Draymond Green, but Clay on the perimeter and the wing. Well, if he's, I don't know, 15, 20% worse, that matters.
Yeah.
Right?
You know what made me think? I'm like, this is just sadistic. I've been watching Succession, so I'm thinking about people as just like,
well, last night, good episode.
But as soon as I see these numbers, I'm like, okay, so what can you get for like Clay and James Wiseman?
Well, Gerard, I told Henry, someone on Twitter wrote that who's got more value in a trade, Wiseman or Poole? And I said to Henry, I still think Wiseman has more, but the fact that it's not a stupid comment or question tells you a lot about where Jordan Poole is. And I don't remember if we wrote something early on in Troop Stages or we did a show about it, but he was one of the guys that I liked. I didn't predict this. I liked him. I thought he had a lot of talent. Golden State deserves a lot of credit for what they've done with him. They're clearly, they know how to develop their guards. Now let's see how they do with James once he returns. But when we talked about being pragmatic and can score inside and out, if James Wiseman can be in that dunk spot, Clint Capella this year, hello, because they're going to have all the offensive stuff they want in the perimeter.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Gerard, here's a little, we don't have quizzes on this show, but I think you're going to get this one. Who did the Nets let go? Who's now like among the league leaders in rebounding?
Oh, it's got to be Alize Johnson.
He's killing it, man.
Why'd they let him go? He was so good last year in the bubble.
Because the front court's so crowded already.
Yeah.
There are 500 old men who need to play.
and that's the thing. It's like, right, I have to play LaMarcus. I have to play Blake Griffin. It's like, oh, okay, fine. Like, I get it.
Two players who were recently thought to be done. Like, yeah.
And I mean, remember on that piece I did at the end of last season, I was like, this dude grabbed 25 boards in a like, yeah. He's someone, like, I get it. The shot's a problem. But guess what? On a court where you got Joe Johnson, Kevin, right. It don't matter if he can't shoot. Right. Like, figure something else out for him to do. Like,
listen, I'm not someone that likes to criticize franchises who clearly are being operated successfully because there's a lot on their plate. So I think what you said right away, Gerard, is right. They're loaded in the front court. Someone has to be let go. When you're competing for a championship, this tends to happen. It's not just because you have superstars, because everyone can play. Harry pointed out so much last couple of years. When you're trotting out a guy that really isn't very good, it's so detrimental to your team. The Jazz last year were the best team in the league without any alpha star because they played 9 dudes who all could fucking play. Derek Favors was their worst one. He could hold the fort down with the other starters, so Rudy could play with their second unit, which demolished the league. And now they're doing it again. They got Rudy Gay and whatever. They got a few guys there, Pascal from Golden State. So Brooklyn is loaded, and it's a casualty. They have this problem in baseball too. You only dress 25.
Yeah,
you've got a ton of prospects, and one guy wants to get paid. You got to trade him. The Rays do this all the time. You can't keep everybody.
I mean, their thing is going to be, and I love Alize Johnson. I think that they actually kind of did him a favor, right? Of like, you know what, let's get you on a squad where you're going to actually play and get some run here. And Sean Marks he's done really as well as you can do. Remember how this team was when they made the Celtics trade? Everybody's like, oh my God, what a disaster Brooklyn is. They're never going to be good for 20 years. Oh, look, we seem to be okay now, right? So you figure things out. I mean, their big thing is going to be how much time does Nick Claxton get on the floor? And does that work? Does that develop? Because you're going to need him in the postseason. Right?
I think so.
And Day'Ron Sharpe, when he plays in Long Island, is Aldridge going to be out for 15 games? Just like, no. Is whoever going to be out 15 games, right? You've got to get these other young dudes in there to get some of their sea legs together because you're going to need them, particularly in the Milwaukee series. I think everybody else fine, but Milwaukee, yeah.
Don't you think Claxton's got a chance?
Oh yeah, he's going to play.
Aaron Sharp, don't count on him.
Aaron won't. He'll be on Long Island. He'll be on Long Island all season, but
yeah, right, which is great.
Yeah. What's up, Henry?
Well, this year's Lakers will be the sort of case study of what you just said, right? Like you want to have these improving young players to keep them or to trade them. But like, if you're just not going to have them, then like you're the stock that just doesn't have a way to go up. Right.
Correct.
And when it's 1 out of 30, you got to be going up. The team that wins is have something going up. Right. And so I feel like this is, the Nets are on the cusp here of like, they've had some Karis LeVerts and Elijah Johnson's come through and then move on without capturing the full value. And I feel like you want to the Lakers are really going to show us maybe your older stars and just whatever you can get for minimum contracts can make a championship.
It's all health, right? And we're already Taylor Horton-Tucker's already hurt. What's his face? The other one. Oh God, Trevor Ariza already hurt. But
in the Lakers case, there are 3 guys with Horton-Tucker, Malik Monk, and Kendrick Nunn. I wrote it the wrong way, Mark, this morning. All 3 of those guys can ascend into a better player than they had been, not just allowing some of the Laker players to rest more, but they're athletic. They've got energy. They bring a different dimension. Now let's see how well the Lakers accommodate that. These are, they're not super experienced. Malik Monk's never been on a good team before, not even close. Charlotte's always sucked. Horton-Tucker's been on the Lakers, but I think he's 20 or 21 years old. Let's just see how those 3 guys do. Nunn has some success with Miami and was good in the NBA Finals because he was injured a little bit before that in the postseason. I think that's why, honestly, guys, I think I have the Lakers at 60% to win a title, which may rank them 3rd or 4th behind Milwaukee and Brooklyn. I don't remember.
It was 16, not 60.
Yeah, right? 16. Yeah. Oh yeah. They're not my favorites. Milwaukee's the favorite in my opinion, and Brooklyn's just behind them. But without those 3, Henry, I don't think I would even give them but a 2%. I agree with you totally. I don't think you can count on just those old dudes and Wayne Ellington. I think all 3 of those guys can play and have different roles. And if they can, the Lakers become more formidable. They're not favorites, in my opinion, because of Russell Westbrook, LeBron, Anthony Davis. The Westbrook part of it just leaves me wanting.
The Lakers' key is Anthony Davis, right? If he is 2-way defensive player of the year, MVP like Anthony Davis, good. If not, well,
The thing that no one knows how to project injuries. Well, actually, that's not true. Marcus Elliott knows
how to project injuries.
But I no one on this show. So they're gonna have injury problems though, right? Every team does, and this team is more likely than most. And so they're gonna have these young players, and they need to sort of have the high energy replacements who hopefully are sort of efficient. But in that they're starting compared to last year, minus Alex Caruso, who is basically as good as a find as you could have, right? So to me, I'm like, your Kendrick Nunn, it seems great and it has the potential to maybe be 78% as useful as Alex Caruso. You know what I mean? They lost a lot.
They're going to have to scheme up defensively. To their credit, they've done that 2 straight years. Frank Vogel's done a great job, but you can't just scheme that up. You need to have the desire from your players with the requisite athletic ability and just kind of disposition. Malik Monk is not known for his defense at all either, not just none. Horton-Tucker should be a good defender one day. He's young now. They've got the work cut out for him, but they've also got 2 former MVPs and Anthony Davis to really push them. Anthony Davis buys into defense. He buys into it, has been buying into it since he got to LA.
But their defense has been really bad in the preseason, right?
I don't think they can. It's something to watch, though. You're not wrong, Henry. We need to watch it because they can't win without it. But I don't think they care now. LeBron definitely doesn't care. That's why his usage rate was down. I think it'll kick up once you start. Same as Luka. Yeah, Jason Kidd can say what he wants. Luka's going to be shooting a lot of shots when this game, which they start tomorrow.
Woo!
Doubleheader. TNT, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, and Lakers, Warriors.
All right, let's pick it just for fun. Who's going to win those games?
Brooklyn gets mad at the trophy ceremony, wins game 1, and Warriors, Jordan Poole goes off for 40. They win game 2.
Oh, I have no.
I like all that.
I don't care about the mad stuff. The Nets can win just because they've got KD and James and Harris and all those guys. DiVincenzo's not back yet.
Not yet.
I think they'll be good games. And Steph Curry, forget about Jordan Poole. We haven't mentioned Steph Curry.
Jordan Poole is the leader of that team.
Yeah.
Curry had an unbelievable postseason, right? A scintillating postseason. I think we're going to see a bunch of that. I think we're going to see him. I didn't give him any MVP odds, but I'm just telling you, he might be in there.
If you want to gamble, Steph's a nice bet for you. Plus 12, 1,700, somewhere in that range. So good.
I think so. I think you're
Warriors
right.
fans are divided into the Steph pool and the Jordan pool. Okay. All right. We got show's over, everybody. I gotta go. Thank you, JD. Thank you, Gerard. Thank you, David. See you guys.